Architects, pull up your Eames chair, put on those black spectacles, and pour yourself a piping hot cup of strong black coffee, because we're about to delve into unfiltered conversations with architects from all over the world discussing all things health and wellness. So if you're an architect that's been searching for more balance, more fulfillment, and more overall health and happiness, turn up your hearing aids just a notch, because we've got the answers. I'm your host, Morgan 𝗧𝗛𝗪𝗑, a licensed architect, stress management consultant, and founder of The Healthy Architect. Grab your trace paper and let's dive in. Hey, architects. During this week's episode, Katerina, who's a licensed architect and soul practitioner, and I chat about her anxiety attacks and how breathwork, meditation, and yoga have helped her overcome these stress-induced attacks. If you're an architect or a design professional who experiences anxiety and not quite sure how to manage it, you should check out the Wellness Hub for Architects, where we have live and on-demand corporate breathwork, corporate meditation, and desk yoga classes aimed to reduce the stress of architects. Don't have time? Don't worry. These classes are 15 minutes or less, designed and curated specifically to fit into your busy schedule. Okay, let's dive into today's episode. Katerina, welcome to the Healthy Architect podcast.
Thank you, Morgan. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Yay, this is a long time coming, and my first podcast ever was on your podcast from the Honeycomb podcast.
Oh, that's right. That's right. And that feels like your episode aired sometime like the beginning of the year, but it feels like a year ago we connected, even longer than that.
It feels like forever ago. So Katerina Burianova is the founder and CEO of Katerina Burianova Architecture Incorporated. She is a sole practitioner, a licensed architect. And is there anything else that I can add on to that?
I mean, you covered the podcast.
Wonderful human being.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And podcast host, but you mentioned the podcast. Otherwise, I think that just about covers it. Is really architect. I love my job, so it's what I do like 24/7. So, yeah.
So when did you open your own firm, Katerina?
So I officially opened my own firm legally last February, so February of 2023, and I'm officially have been on my own since June 1st of 2023. So I incorporated first while working at my 9 to 5, and I wanted to get the behind the scenes things started, incorporating, starting a company, putting together a business account, getting the website going, because you can only get so far without knowing what your name is going to be and if that name is available in the state that you work in. And of course, Katerina Burianova was not taken, Katerina Burianova Architecture. So I was able to kind of just use that name, but I was also working full-time at my previous firm. And I had been talking with my boss about possibly going part-time. He knew I wanted to start my own company. I was very transparent with all of that. And my goal was to go part-time kind of end of 2023, kind of get everything situated, save enough money up. It's quite a leap to go into entrepreneurship. And ended up getting let go middle of May last year, and projects were kind of dwindling. It's a blessing in disguise. It's a blessing in disguise now, but when I was going through it, it was not a blessing. But ended up it worked out. My boss ended up downsizing the company. Another person got let go a few months after me. So it ended up pushing my timeline up a little bit. But as of June 1st, I was officially on my own, and I just celebrated my 1 year, and it has been a whirlwind of a year, a roller coaster of a year. And I know, as you know now, Morgan, being on your own, there's a lot that you wear many, many hats that you weren't expecting probably to wear and that you don't typically have to wear at your 9 to 5 when you work for someone else. So it has been gratifying, scary at times, but so rewarding.
Do you think that was the universe kind of pushing you out when you got laid off, saying, Katerina, you're ready. You're more than ready. Reflecting back on it?
Absolutely. I think like those 2 weeks before, when I was let go to when I officially was on my own, like those were incredibly difficult, and just figuring everything out, figuring out your own health insurance all of a sudden, there's a lot that goes into it. But now looking back on it, It was like the perfect divine timing. Everything that's happened since then has just made so much sense. Everything that's been happening in my life has just made sense. Like this last month, I was traveling to the Czech Republic because I had a sick family relative there. I was also visiting my sister in Boston, and I had to attend my grandfather's funeral in Colorado. And so I was all over the world traveling, but I was able to do that and to spend time with family because I had my business. I would not have been able to do all of that had I been working at any of my previous jobs. And so it's just allowed me to create this life with I wouldn't it's like I have a freedom of time, but yet I feel like I don't have any time to do anything else sometimes than besides working on my company. But it's I get to choose what to do with my time and when to do what I need to get done. And that is, I mean, that's awesome.
It's amazing, right? Yeah.
Mhm.
So tell me about your health and wellness during this transition into entrepreneurship.
So definitely meditating was something I've been meditating since about 2017. So that's a practice and a ritual. It's changed and flowed differently, depending on what chapter, what season of life I'm in. Like this morning, for example, my meditation was, which I was inspired by your Instagram post, was to get outside. And I ended up just sitting outside, having my cup of tea, and just like listening to the birds and just sitting out there taking deep breaths. And that was my meditation. Sometimes I do guided meditations, but meditations really help me kind of ground down and help that like monkey brain just like figure out my thoughts. Another thing is, gratitude. That's something that writing a gratitude list if I can, journaling about gratitude, kind of thinking about positive things that are happening in your life. And I think I have to really say that my husband also helped me throughout this time as well. He is someone who supported me not only financially but also emotionally and of course because there's that financial equation that comes into when you're let go and you start your own company. But he's someone too, and conversations with him and brainstorming with him, that was a huge thing. And then also I made sure I wasn't going to burn out. At first, like that first week, I was so stressful. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not getting 40 billable hours like I used to. Now I don't look at billable hours as showing success of a week's worth of work. It's, did I have client communications? Did I sign up a new project? Did I go to a networking event? Did I, because there's a lot of overhead that goes into a business that you can't bill. And so I started to realize, okay, I can't be stressed about that. And managing my time, especially, is huge. I am someone who does, during architecture school, I did not thrive in all nighters, late nights. I will go to bed early and wake up early to get my stuff done. I'll get it done. And so time management was a huge thing as well during that time. And also accepting that sometimes I do have to work on the weekends, and that's okay. It depends how I manage my time during the week. There's some architects who are like, oh, you should never work on the weekends. Sometimes it happens. And maybe like just because I work on Sunday morning doesn't mean I don't get Tuesday afternoon off. It's kind of just managing that time.
Yeah, and there's this word, I know you didn't even say hustle within what you were just talking about, but there's this word hustle. I'm not opposed to hustle as long as you want to hustle and as long as you're taking breaks, right? So again, one shouldn't be opposed to working on a Sunday if they want to work, if they find joy in it, if they take a Tuesday afternoon off, right? I mean, there's the balance.
No, absolutely. And the thing about Sunday mornings is you don't get phone calls, you don't get emails. And sometimes that has been my most, even just 2 hours. I've had the most productive Sunday mornings in 2 hours because there's nobody bothering you, which is really nice.
Yeah, it's kind of like that creative flow and freedom. You've got that freedom on Sunday mornings, right? You're not worried about who's texting you, who's emailing you, what you need to get done. It's just like a 2-hour chunk of time that you can actually focus creatively.
Hmm.
So, we have so much in common that I wanna go back to meditation now, and personally, selfishly, I wanna talk to you about meditation, but before we do that, I want to chat with you about time management, specifically because I think that this is something that most architects maybe don't thrive with time management. So let's talk about that and let's talk about, how do you manage your time? What are some tidbits that you could give to architects to better manage their time?
Great question. So, what I have found very successful for me is batching work. So that means doing a certain task for a certain amount of time and just batching it. So I know that I am the most productive in the morning. So when I wake up to about like right before lunch is my most productive time. It's when my brain is the most alert. And so I put in batching for tasks that are hard to like if I'm doing like a zoning analysis or something, or I'm trying to figure something out, or drawings, those can be good to do in the mornings, or I'm trying to figure out like a complex solution to something, whatever is really hard for me to work on, I'll leave that for the mornings and batch that. So I'll do emails at one point and they'll be like, okay, now it's time for CAD drawings. And then in the afternoon, when I know that I'm going to start crashing and I'm trying to reduce my caffeine too, because I could also be caffeinated. I love coffee, but
I know, me too. Coffee, everything, coffee ice cream, coffee covered espresso beans. Yeah.
it's so good, so good. But I also know that even with a cup of coffee, just my energy in the afternoons is just not what it is in the mornings. So I batch tasks in the afternoon that don't require as much thinking. So that could be going to a site to look at how construction's going, something that gets me out of the house, or it could be a social networking event, or if it works out in the afternoon, or it could be potential client meeting, or it could be a client meeting, just things that kind of get me out of the house. So it's just anything like that. So I found that that has really helped me. So it's designing my day per my efficiency and then batching the work that I have to do. So, like, for example, over the next 4 days, I have multiple podcast interviews for my podcast. And then it worked out that you and I could podcast because I have everything set up. I'm kind of in that zone of being able to be on screen and to talk and share, and I've got the energy for it. And that's also a way for me to batch and to be able to even get my podcast episodes recorded.
Yeah, yeah, it's really efficient, I would say. And what do you do? Here's something that I struggle with. What do you do if there's something on your list that you know that has to get done, but you are avoiding it? Where do you put that in your day?
I actually have something. I have something that just came to the forefront of my
Oh,
mind.
no.
I'm supposed to check in with one of my contractors, and I was supposed to do it yesterday. And I'm just like, I'm just not feeling it. And it's nothing that's like, if I don't call him today, tomorrow, Monday, the world is going to stop. The construction's going to stop.
Uh-huh.
But I just at the end of this week, I'm just like, I don't know. I just don't want, and it kind of has something to do dealing with kind of an issue. And I'm just like, ugh. So that's an example of I just, well, let me back up. Every Monday morning, I have a meeting with myself, and it's like my internal meeting. And I cover every project. Where is it in the status? I also lay out my list of to do lists for the week. Now, this call kind of came in. I was like, oh, I should call him. I think I put it on my Thursday list. And then Thursday came and went. And so I just circle it, which means like the task was not done for the day. And so it's on, so today, Friday morning, I was looking at all my little circles from the previous days. What did I not complete? And I saw that and I was like, okay. So I'm like, well, I do need to call him today. I thought about calling him before we recorded together because I was like, oh, I've got some time. And I'm like, that's not the headspace I want to be in. So I'm just kind of giving myself like, I'm procrastinating, let's be honest. But I'm giving myself grace that once I feel like I'm in the moment, I'll just do it. It's just I don't know when that moment's coming. Hopefully, it's gonna come around lunch. But it's like that's an example of just a task. So if there's something I really don't wanna do, honestly, I know the moment I press, like, call, I'm gonna be in the headspace. I'm gonna be good. Like, there's drawings, like, let's say there were some corrections I was kind of also dragging my feet on a little bit. It wasn't a big due date. And I'm like, I know the moment I'm 5 minutes into my task, I'm going to get into that task. And then it's the getting there, and that's the hardest part. It's the showing up. It's like with anything. It's like getting on my yoga mat. That's another thing that I do is practice yoga, which is also really good for your mental well-being.
We have a yoga instructor coming on next Monday, I believe, with the Healthy Architect. Have you seen that?
Nice.
Yeah, she's gonna do
Not oh, nice.
it's
Oh,
a
I think I
free
did see
class.
that. Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
free
yeah.
class. She's gonna do, desk yoga, so stretching at your desk during the Revit scene.
Nice. Smart. No, that's really good. Yeah, so it's the hardest part is showing up. So if there's a task you have to do. One thing I've also done before is if there's something like drawings that I don't want to do, I've given myself like a timer. This is what I did when I was studying for the AREs because I really sometimes didn't want to study. That's an example. Is I would give myself a timer like, okay, 30 minutes. That's all you have to do. For the next 30 minutes, this is the task you have to do. And guess what? After 30 minutes, sometimes I'd be like, yeah, let's keep studying. Like I'm kind of in the flow. You just have to get into the flow. That's my advice.
It's hard, it's hard. It's that transition, right, between, like, not doing it and doing it. Once you're in it,
Yes.
it's good to go. Yeah. I don't know if I should do this, but sometimes I treat myself with a little
Oh,
chocolate
nice.
kiss. I'm like, "Okay, if I make that call, then I can have a chocolate kiss afterwards."
Smart.
I don't know I don't know if it's smart or not, but I, lure myself into doing things with chocolate. I don't know how healthy that is.
If it gets it done, I think there's nothing I used to funny thing you mentioned that. I used to reward myself for doing well on practice exams for the
Mhm.
ARE exams because I knew once I got the license, it just at the beginning of your architecture journey, it like the licensure seems like so far away.
Yeah, yeah,
And I'm like, I want something tangible that I can say, look, I just did
yeah.
this. So if I got a certain percentage above a practice test, I bought myself something.
Yay.
So I I would buy like whatever it was, like it wasn't like, like really expensive things, but if there was something I was kind of like thinking about buying, then I would kind of prepare a list and be like, okay, and then after an exam I would treat myself. I think that's one thing is treating yourself. And especially when you work for yourself, there's no one like a boss to say at the end of the day, "Hey, Morgan, good job. Good job on getting that deadline done."
Mhm.
And so it's having so that kiss is kind of like your reward from having someone who previously would have said, "Hey, good job." And like I know there's been moments where there was a moment a few months ago where I finished a really important deadline for a client and I like hit send and it's like, that moment when you used to be in the office and like you got a deadline done with your teammates and everybody would be like, "Oh my gosh, like that's so great." Like and I just kind of sat here and I was like, there's nobody here to tell me good job. So I gave myself a high five. And I was like and, and I was like, that's it, good job. Yeah. Yeah, number 1 team player in the group. Um,
You get Employee of the Month award.
I've actually after that moment, I talked to my husband and I was like, I should do an employee of the month, employee of the year. Wouldn't that be fun? 'Cause
Put it on your Instagram, like, every month, like, "This
yeah.
is the employee."
Yeah. I mean, put that in under my LinkedIn, like, I get employee of the month every month. I've had
Every month.
employee of the month for over a
You
year
have
now.
to
So,
celebrate yourself, right? You have to
yeah.
celebrate your small wins, your medium wins, and your big wins.
Mhm.
Whether that's with yourself
Absolutely.
and you can call me at any time, and I will give you a virtual high five, but you have
Thank
to
you.
celebrate yourself, right? So how often
Mhm.
do you check in with yourself, and how often do you celebrate yourself?
So I definitely check in a lot, especially on those Monday mornings. And then even at the end of the week, I'll do a check in. I'll kind of look through how did the week go. And then a big check in is obviously when I put together my invoices at the first of every month to see, where did that billable time go? And there's that monetary value that comes to being rewarded and being like, wow, look at all this billable time you did. So that's huge. Now with my company, we definitely with my husband, we like champagne. So we'll be like, "Oh, let's get a bottle of champagne and celebrate." And then at one point, there was one week where I was like, "Okay, we need to cut back on the champagne because we were both doing so well." I'm like, this isn't working." Like
You're gonna have a champagne room in your apartment.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
how do you check in with your health and wellness though? Because I mean, you own your own firm and there's nobody, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's nobody to really look to when your computer shuts down or when the red lines don't get completed other than yourself. So how do you check in with your health and wellness and how often do you do that?
I would say I check it like when it comes to things not getting done and like I never thought I'd be the person who would stay late up at night thinking about like, oh my gosh, the to-do lists and the tasks. And I found myself doing that. And I found myself doing that this past week. And I told my brain, I'm like, it's written down, it's on the to-do list, like just let it go. And so it's the checking in when I have a lot to do and I feel like I've been doing a really good job when I know I have a big deadline coming up. I just kind of sit with myself and go, okay, did I give myself enough time? And kind of check in. And if I start to get stressed out, what is it that I can do that can help me with that stress? Which is a huge thing. So, like, I had that big deadline and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm going to have enough time to get anything done. And I started feeling myself get stressed out. So, I'd be like, let's write it down. What do you need to complete to be able to get that submission in? And then what day can you assign it to? okay, so in the morning, that's when I'm most efficient. Let's get the hardest tasks done there. So it's whenever I check in with myself whenever I have that moment of like when I start to get a little anxious or stressed out, because I don't want to do that. I don't like that. It's not good for your body. It's not good for your mental health. And so I do my best. Of course, I'm not perfect, but whenever I find myself getting really stressed out and even having conversations with my husband, I'll be like, I don't know, I'm just really stressed out. But what I've seen time and time again now is the work always ends up getting done somehow. So it's just reminding myself that the work is going to get done. Just trust yourself, prioritize your time. It goes back to that time management. Time management is a huge thing. If you don't have time management, then you're going to be stressed out all the time, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so what do you do maintenance-wise for your health and wellness? So when you just said that when you feel yourself getting stressed, you start implementing X, Y, and Z, but do you do anything maintenance even when you aren't feeling stressed just to make sure that you're not pointing in the direction of stress?
Definitely moving my body. So going back to like my yoga practice, if I can get in a yoga class, that helps. If I feel like time wise I can't get in a yoga class or doesn't work with my schedule, going for a walk, which is something I learned from you. when you
Walk
when
snack?
you yep, when you came on my podcast and you're like, yeah, just even a 5 minutes. And that's just getting outside, getting outdoors. Sometimes, like, even I'll tell my husband if he's getting stressed. So, my husband's a general contractor. He also just started his own company. So, between the two of us, the stress levels can be fairly high.
Yeah.
And so we go for walks on the beach, which always helps like center us.
Mhm.
And it's just kind of just getting outside. So that's like the big maintenance thing. I think now that I'm more established in my company and I'll be good with taking more like vacations or like breaks. So, like
Mhm.
next weekend, we're going camping with my husband, and I know that's going to be a reward for us because it's in nature. We're going to
Mhm.
not have any screens in front of us. I'm like hoping
Mhm.
there's no signal or Wi Fi or anything. I'm just like praying for that.
Yeah.
And that'll be a huge thing is remembering to like treat yourself as well for just taking a few days off. Because at first I was working 6, 7 days a week because I had
Mhm.
things to do and I also didn't like want to burn out. And on the weekends, I didn't really have, I was like, well, I can't spend money doing things because I don't have money right now to spend because I have
Mhm.
to work, put everything into my company. But
Yeah.
now I'm starting to kind of find times when I can enjoy and do things. And I think that's a big thing too, is making sure you do take those breaks too.
Yeah. Do you schedule them in advance?
Some, yes. So I'm a huge planner. Like I have every weekend this month booked already with something. And that could be either camping, that could be like more podcasting, or that could be this weekend is going to be open for however I'm feeling, if anything's coming up for work, or if we're going to go see like my husband's family. So I do schedule stuff in advance. One thing I found is like Friday afternoons is when I'm least productive. So I've started to do grocery shopping and like things, also finding tasks when I feel like I need to be productive, but I don't have the energy to be productive, is finding tasks that will like move the needle for me, because I'm always like going. So I know Friday afternoons, I don't want to think, but I also don't want to just like sit around and just wait for the weekend to come. So I'm like, why don't I go grocery shopping? That way we don't have to go over the weekend. And I just kind of flow through it and I get my to do list done. And that's a task I can take on.
Ah, that's awesome. I do literally after this podcast, I'm going grocery shopping, and it's Friday while
Oh,
we're doing this. So
nice.
that's like perfect. Isn't it? It's
Yep.
the greatest time to shop because you don't eat into your weekend. It's a mindless task-ish,
Hmm.
it's a social task-ish, gets me out of the house. So yeah, that's interesting. Just one more thing we have in common, Katerina.
Yes.
Okay, so this might make you a little bit uncomfortable in a good way, maybe. Can
Mhm.
you reflect back on a time where you were stressed to the max, where you felt as if things were spiraling out of control and you were just stressed, you were buried in work? And can you describe that a little bit? Describe how you felt when you were stressed to the max? And then I want you to talk about the small things maybe you did to get yourself out of that stress.
I actually was reflecting on that this morning because I was reading my book at breakfast and the character was going through an anxiety attack. And I was like, I remember getting anxiety attacks. Thank God I no longer get anxiety attacks because they suck. And I used to get them right at the end of my journey with the AREs because those exams, for your listeners who are going through it or have been through it, and I know you've been through them, they're really hard and
Mhm.
they're really rough.
They're
And I
rough.
really struggled.
Yeah.
I was also unhappy with my work. I had a client at work who was just absolutely unbearable on top of, you're working 40 plus hour weeks on top of studying. And I mean, just I would get anxiety attacks, especially before the exams. And so I started incorporating as much mindfulness as I could. So I got that gratitude, the 5-minute gratitude journal, did that a little bit, kept going into my meditations. I would also see if I could go for, again, going back to those walks with my husband on the beach, meditating, making gratitude lists, just like anything I could do to get positivity. Because I think a lot of with like anxiety and stressfulness, a lot of those like negative thoughts can come in and you can get so overwhelmed. And so even just like having conversations with my husband and just being able to talk it out is huge for me. So it was just a lot of just getting throughout those anxiety attacks. It was a lot of just like breath work as well. I found anything I could online for like, and that was around, so that part was around like 2021, 2022. So there were still a lot of online things after COVID. So if I found like a breathwork class or like de-stressing or something, that would really, really help me. But whenever I feel an anxiety attack like coming on, or when I used to feel them coming on, there's like a safe space in my home that I would go to, and I would just lay down there. And then my husband, sometimes, if I allowed him or not, he would come and like hold me, like cuddle me, like be like a heavy blanket. If he wasn't home, I would just kind of breathe through it. And then one of the things that actually also I just remembered that really helped me is if I was having an anxiety attack about whatever it was, I would start to go through a list. And I don't know where if I came up with this or if I heard this somewhere, but it was whatever you're stressed about. Is it a matter of life or death? No? Okay, take a breath. Okay, good. So it's not a matter of life or death. Does this affect if you are going to have a place to sleep tonight? Roof over your head? Does it affect like where you're going to, live the next few days or weeks? No? Okay, well, let's bring it back down a notch then. It's obviously not that. Does it affect health? Does it affect family members? And you kind of go through this list in your head. And by the time you get to what you're stressing about, it honestly doesn't really matter at the end of the day. It's like the littlest thing that at the like now even thinking about it, I'm like, I probably don't even remember what I was stressed about back then. Like what triggered it, right? You just forget about it. But in the moment, it's like the biggest thing. And so if you can minimize it to have it be this insignificant thing, you just kind of that helps with that stress.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really awesome. I've never went through that list, but that's interesting, and I'm definitely gonna start doing that. Yeah, those anxiety attacks can be paralyzing, both mentally and physically.
No, absolutely. Yeah, it's wild. Like my left arm always goes like completely numb.
Oh, oh.
It's like the weirdest thing. It's like the weirdest thing, and then I can also feel it, like, on my face, like, there's, like, a little tingliness, and so, like, now I can catch them ahead of time. I mean, I haven't knock on wood, I haven't had them, like, in a a long time since I passed the exams.
So what do you do when you catch them ahead of time? Like, what do you do? I always describe to my husband when I see my arrow, my north arrow pointing towards stress and burnout, I have these things where I implement in my life and I'm like, nope, we're not even pointing towards stress anymore. I used to allow it to point in that direction and then get 1 inch closer and 1 inch closer and 1 inch closer to burnout. But now I won't even allow my arrow to point in that direction. So, what would you tell listeners to do when their arrow starts pointing towards anxiety and stress and anxiety attacks?
Take a step back, like, take a moment, walk away from whatever you're working on, so if you're at your desk and you're stressed out about something, just, like, take a beat. If you're studying, you're stressed out about something, take a beat. If you can, go for a walk or sit down, put on a meditation, focus on your breath, kind of recenter. Because now that I've learned all about these anxiety attacks, it's of course, it's all about, like, your breath and the feelings inside, and you want that feeling sucks. It's just, like, oh, just thinking about it, like,
Mhm.
gives me chills. And so it's, like, you want to just breathe it out. So if there's whatever feels good for you, maybe dancing it out, maybe you like to dance or go for a walk or just move your body. I think one time I did something, it was like some energy cleansing workshop also for like anxiety. And we just like shook ourselves for like 5 minutes. And you can just like feel the energy, like the stressful energy go away. So my advice would be don't keep sitting in that space. Also, I'm big on like energy. So, whatever the energy in your space is that you're stressed out, you need to like step away. and let that energy kind of clear. If you're
Mhm.
into saging, sage it, whatever you want to do. Get some fresh air.
Yeah.
Fresh air is a
Yeah.
big thing too. I think a lot of us sit under fluorescent lighting in air conditioned spaces. So getting fresh air is a huge thing.
Yeah, I wish we moved our bodies so much more than we do, you know? Just
Hmm.
those 5-minute, what I call walk snacks are so helpful to anybody, right? Like, I tell my dad all the time, "Just take a 5-minute walk snack." I don't think he does, but just moving our body in any form or fashion, like you said, dancing, walking, yoga. You know, I think architects a lot of times are all or nothing, and I'm really when I say architects, I'm really talking about myself. I am an all or nothing kind of person, but as I age, I have realized that it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It doesn't have to be a 30-minute walk. It can be a 5-minute walk. It doesn't have to be a full-on CrossFit weightlifting, right?
Hmm.
Like, you can go in your garage and weightlift 5 pounds, and that's good
Hmm.
enough sometimes. So yeah. So last question, Katerina. What would you tell your younger architectural self in regards to health and wellness?
So I like immediately went back to like university, college, right? Architecture school. And I would tell myself, because even then, like architecture school was so stressful. And I would tell myself, like, at the end of the day, like, go, it doesn't matter. Like, whatever you're stressing about, I'm sure you're stressing about it in the moment, unless you're absolutely like failing through architecture school. That's one thing. But whatever it is that you're stressed out about right now, it doesn't matter. It's not going to matter. What matters most importantly is your health and your well-being, because I remember I would come back from architecture school and my mom was like, you always look like a different person. Like your eyes would be so sunken in and like you just looked, oh, she's like, you looked awful. And then you would get like 2 to 3 days of sleep and like healthy food. Big thing is nutrition. I ate crap food in college, and I mean, I went to Illinois Tech in Chicago. The food court had terrible food. I was also in the south side of Chicago. The food options were you got a bunch of Italian food, a lot of like fried chicken food, and it's just very unhealthy food. So I would have told myself, focus on what you eat as well, because I think that would have really impacted how much energy I had. Definitely not
Yeah.
caffeinated as much. So I think I would have told my younger self, don't stress out
Mhm.
about these things, because honestly, at the end of the day, you're not going to remember what they are in a few years. And second is be mindful of what you put in your body. And I know now I'm so focused, like, and I think by being in part of yoga, and I got my yoga teacher training certificate back in 2017. So being immersed in all of that world, I now focus on eating organic and eating healthy. But in college, also financially, you don't have the means to eat organic and eat, and cook for yourself, right? You're living in a dorm. But I definitely feel like I could have had healthier food options. And I think that would have also helped me just feel my best.
Yeah. Katerina, I just want to say, whether you know it or not, you are such a positive role model
Oh,
for
thank
so many
you.
individuals, so many architects, especially female architects that maybe one day, maybe today they don't have the courage to go out on their own, but because of you, I think that they will.
Mm,
And thank you for all of this tidbits of knowledge and just continue being the person that you are because you are absolutely amazing. Can you tell our listeners how to find you and where to find you?
absolutely. Well, also, thank you for that. You almost made me cry.
Not yet,
uh,
not yet.
Not yeah, I got makeup on too, and I got another interview after after that. Can't do that. But yes, so listeners can find me. I'm most active on at From the Honeycomb podcast. Oh, I also have an ebook about launching your own architecture firm. So you can also, I forgot to mention, I got to plug that. So if you are looking to launch your own architecture firm mindfully, I created the mindful blueprint for launching your architecture firm. You
Yes.
can find the link on my Instagram at From the Honeycomb podcast. That's really where I'm the most active, where you can find me, where you can find about the podcast. I share, my daily life, entrepreneurship, architecture, and then personal stuff. So I also have a newsletter. All those links are in my Instagram link tree, so you can find me there.
Awesome, Katerina. Well, thank you so very much, and I guess as we head to the grocery store, I might see you there.
Yes, you might.
Okay, see you later. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye. Architects, this podcast is the culmination of the most creative minds in the world. The planning and programming of this content is extensive, and I'm proud to be a small part of the change that's happening in our profession. If you want to be a part of this change, the very best thank you you can give the healthy architect is giving us a 5-star review and sharing this episode with a colleague. When you give us a 5-star review and you share this podcast, you are playing a role in changing our industry, one architect at a time. Be happy, be healthy, and take action towards a more fulfilling career. See you next week on the Healthy Architect Podcast.